really sorry we had to have this visit today. Um, Anytime this happens, people in my position say how difficult a decision it was and how much they struggled with it. And in this particular case, it's true in a level that's hard to explain. And a lot of what I'm going to say is going to sound somewhat logically incongruent today. Um, I think the world of Stan Van Gundy. This is a man I have enormous personal respect for. As I said in our season wrap-up media session, I think he and his staff did a remarkable job during what were almost untenable circumstances last season. And I very much believed that. And I believe that to this day. This is a tremendous basketball coach. And what he will have given us in terms of attention to detail and work ethic is something that's going to carry with us for quite a long time. More importantly, this is a man who invests deeply, both in his actions and in his finances, in the causes he cares about. He's lived his entire life in a really upstanding, decent way. And I can't tell you how much I learned just about how to be the right type of person from Stan over the years watching him. This is something that I've agonized over. And Stan and I agonized over together. You saw from the release that this is something where we mutually agreed to part company. The way that happened was because COVID was so significant in the season and played such a huge role in everybody's spiritual approach to things. We intentionally took quite a bit of time before we visited in great detail. We spoke immediately after the season in some detail after we each did our exit interviews with players and staff. And we've subsequently had a great many conversations since, probably 2 or 3 of real substance. This is a person who believed in what we were doing here and wanted to be part of building a family that loves each other enough to tell each other what they need to hear. We did that together for each other over the last 3 weeks, and that's how we ended up here. This decision was not wrought out of our previous results. Now, immediately everybody's going to say, well, surely if you would have achieved X, Y, Z. Okay, I'm not engaging in hypotheticals. This was wrought in our philosophical difference in the way we're going to reach the next step in our development. Teams have phases to them, and you've heard me say this many times. We need to learn how to compete before we win, and then ultimately how we contend. And those phases have really unique stages. We reached a point where it was clear we didn't believe philosophically in the way we were going to progress from where we are today to where we want to go. And we have a lot of winning to do here. We have kids that have very high expectations, young men rather, that have very high expectations of what this is going to be and what this is going to look like. And we have ownership that I'm blessed to say is invested in this at every level. And when you realize you're not all in lockstep together on what the future needs to look like, you can do a couple different things in the NBA. You can decide to write it out and hope that nobody notices, or you can recognize that we don't have time to waste. And when you know there's a disconnect, a philosophical underlying disconnect, you hope you have ownership that supports the decisions basketball would recommend. And in this case, we did. Stan himself, I think, had a great deal of reluctance because of this disconnect we had. We're going to ask our fans, as this city opens up and is going to be alive in a way it never has been, we're going to ask them to be alive with us. We're going to ask them to be all in with us. We're asking our players to be all in with us. If we're not all in with each other, this doesn't work. And we reached the point where it was clear that energetically we were not going to be that. So that's what this decision is. This is something that was very, very difficult to execute, but it revealed itself over some very open, candid conversations with a really, really good man. So with that, I'd like to answer any questions. I'm looking at some of your faces now. I'd like to apologize to some of you for being as evasive as I was. Stan had a very clear desire to speak to his staff before anything got out. I thought that was the right thing to do, and I supported that. And many of you continued to hound me on this story. Many of you were just doing your job. I have a great deal of appreciation for what your job is. At the same time, while I open this up for questions, I want to be clear about the fact that there are a lot of things I'm not going to want to speak to. This is entirely about putting us in the best position to achieve the sustainable success we've preached. We are going to do that. This job remains very attractive. And we've got a group of kids that are anxious to be coached. And I need to stop calling people kids, but when you're 51, that's what happens. We got a group of people that really want to succeed here. And everybody's on alert for what it is we're trying to do. And again, just supporting ownership for giving us the bandwidth to do this when she did. And really appreciating Stan for the candor during the last few weeks of conversations. So go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Griff? This is Will from The Athletic. When you guys hired Stan and you spoke to us, you said, you guys went through a long list of candidates. You were very thorough in the process and you felt confident that Stan was the right hire. I guess, how do you get from that point to where we are today? And can you speak to some of the philosophical differences that you just mentioned that led to this?
Yeah, it's a great question, Will. And obviously, when we set out to do that, one of the things we talked about, and I talked to many of you offline about, is the hardest thing we do in our business is hire a coach. It's a very difficult fit to find. And at least that's been my experience, which probably speaks to maybe not being very good at it. But I think there's a difficulty in the process in and of itself as you go through it. It was certainly a difficulty during a COVID season and a half, in the circumstances under which we were applying our interview process. What changed, Will, really is that we arrived at a point where the fit didn't feel as good as it did initially. And I would say that a great deal of that is because, and I said this at the end of the season, Stan and his staff didn't have an opportunity to even hold very many practices to really get everybody on the same page. So in terms of finding fit in a year where literally the bar seemed to be moving all the time, just in terms of the war of attrition that the season was, it's difficult to say we would have found that at all with anybody. But I do think the value in a season that difficult was that it was a very tense environment. It was sort of a crucible of sorts that gave us a great deal more insight into emotionally and spiritually what this was going to look like together. And I think in terms of the philosophical differences, it's really more about the energy, the enthusiasm we're going to bring to this on a daily basis and the approach we're going to bring to it on a daily basis.
Hey, Griff, Christian Clark here. And to that point, I mean, what kind of energy do you want to bring on a daily basis? And how is that different than the energy that was brought on a daily basis?
Well, and that, again, like that's to say that it wasn't done a certain way, right? If I say this is what we're looking for, then the implication is that didn't exist. We want the same things we've always wanted. And there are several staff members here that predate me on the basketball side. We've had several coaching staff members that have been here in terms of the continuity over time. I think all of those people would tell you that we've been very clear in this. We want people that are all in on the mission of winning in New Orleans, that are all about us and this situation. Stan was certainly that. That's not going to change. There's a way we're going to be all in on each other. There's a way we're going to generate the kind of energy we need to. And that's where we were philosophically at odds, if that's even the right verbiage to use.
Hey, Stan, looking forward, without, I guess, diving too much into the coaching search, you did go through that process last year. How much do you lean on that when starting this new one? And do you look, are you looking just external, or are you also looking at internal candidates as well?
So to the point that you made and Will did as well, we did do a very extensive search last season. It led us to a pool of names in and around 20. From that, we did all of our research and fact finding and came down to 9 people we met with. Moving forward, there will be some people that were in that process that will be part of it again. There will be some people that were not able to take part in that process for different reasons last year that would be part of it as well. In terms of the internal candidates, I would say that we've talked to our staff. We've actually spoken to all of our players today as well. That's a discussion that I'm going to be much more mindful of and slow play a little bit. But I think you'll see that we've got an incredible coaching staff here. I really think we've got a group in place that we want to preserve as many of as we can. And we're going to be mindful of that.
Griff, how would you characterize what you've learned going through these last 2 seasons with extending Alvin and then moving on from him and then hiring Stan, moving on from him? Obviously, there's something you're looking for that you haven't quite gotten to. How would you sort of characterize what you've learned as you now enter a search here?
Scott, that's a fantastic question. And it can't be, look, the future is informed by the past. It can't be separated that one of the things I've learned is that the ability to overcome adversity, both in the heat of the moment and over the course of a season, is really critical to success. I think if you look at the teams that are still playing, and again, what I've referred to as a war of attrition, they've been able to reshape themselves a variety of different ways. There's a emotional response to adversity, and the best teams don't react emotionally to that. That's not a statement about the coaching. That's a statement about what we've seen trying to live through these last 2 seasons. So that informs the decisions we've made. In terms of the coaching situation, I knew this already to be true. We won a championship in Cleveland with Ty Lue as a first-year head coach. It can be done a lot of different ways. Where you can't have any slippage is in an understanding of what our mission is and a single-mindedness of purpose of how we're going to achieve it. And if we've made a mistake in this process, it's that we hadn't been able to identify properly that single-mindedness of purpose and that shared vision. And we need to do a better job of that moving forward. At the same time, I would tell you, I believe the staff that was here gave us an enormous amount of positives that we're going to really lean back on, and Stan is at the forefront of that.
Hey, David, it's Fletcher Mackel. I had 2 questions. I'm sorry. I was going to ask the first one, kind of following up on what Scott just said in what you just answered there. Can you talk about maybe the pressure, if any, that you feel after Alvin and Stan, and the responsibility that you have at this point of your tenure here after 2 coaches? And then the second one is, I know that you said you're not going to delve too deeply into it, but with somebody like Teresa Witherspoon, knowing the historic factor of that and the outside pressure that may come from Adam Silver talking about having a woman become a head coach in the league, how much will you have to compartmentalize that, knowing that there will be outside factors talking about that situation?
So I'll start with the second one first, Fletcher. I talked to Coach Witherspoon today. Spoon is absolutely universally beloved by our staff and our players. What I think happened with the inertia that was created around her name as a candidate immediately being launched forward is one of the phenomenons of the social media age. It's also one of the phenomenons of asking Coach Witherspoon to be our head summer league coach in a room full of people. So I think a lot was made of that. That gained a lot of traction because of that. Coach Spoon is really, really central to our future. I think that's a little premature in terms of the conversation around her being a candidate, Fletcher. I think that's early. She and I spoke about that directly. And I feel like much was made of this summer league head coach situation. It sort of ran away from itself. In terms of the pressure I feel, Fletcher, it's no different than the pressure I felt the day we took the job. We've been given an incredible opportunity here with ownership that supports this at the highest level. Mrs. Benson and her team have given us every opportunity and every tool we're going to need to succeed. I felt the same pressure walking in the door day one. The rest of our staff that we've been blessed to be able to hire, which is among the very best in the NBA on so many levels, I can't really begin to explain all of them. Trajan Langdon and Swin Cash being part of the team that will be moving forward, interviewing a coach. We've been put in a very leveraged position. I felt pressure when I went to bed that first night. I feel the same pressure now. We have as much job security as we win. We earn that job security every day. And it's no different today, having gone through 3 coaches in 3 years, than it was when I walked in the door. Our success is what's going to determine our outcome. And if we are not successful, it's not going to be because anybody failed. It's going to anyone else rather failed or put us in position to fail. It's going to be because we did not achieve what we need to. And I would say this to all of our players as well. And we've talked to the vast majority of our players today. A very, very good human being and a damn good basketball coach is not going to be here now. It's on all of us, top to bottom. Everybody has to get better. And everyone already felt that pressure, Fletcher, and that nothing changes. We have a lot of winning to do, and we have a city and a fan base counting on it that deserves it. And that's no different than it was day one.
Hey, Griff, you mentioned some of the qualities you're looking for in your next coach: energy, enthusiasm, shared vision. Are there things different now in this search than maybe a year ago that you're looking for now that you've had a full year and you've learned a little more about your team, in particular this group of players?
Yeah, and Jeff, I don't want to get too deeply into those things. They're not really fundamentally different. Attention to detail is something that Stan brought with him for sure. Accountability and our ability to get better over the course of the season defensively is something that we cared a great deal about, and he did all those things. There were many, many, many of the boxes that we would have checked then that he checks today, and that staff checks. The fit ultimately is very difficult to find, and I think the real issue moving forward is just to find somebody that you're in lockstep with, and that includes ownership as well. That has to be something where we're all moving together in the same spirit and the same sort of energy. And I don't know how else to put it than that. But other than that, in terms of the individual characteristics we were looking for, we have the same group of hungry young men that want to succeed at the highest level and are willing to be coached. So it won't be a great deal different in terms of the boxes we're trying to check.
Hi, Griff. It's Jen from Fox. We've talked a lot about the faces of the franchise, Zion, BI. Will they be involved in this process at all? What type of role and input will they have on this next coaching selection?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, Jen, we spoke to our whole team, both as part of exit interviews, and then myself and Swin and Trajan have been able to connect with everybody today. We have a real understanding of who they are as people. I think we have a pretty good understanding of what winning means to this group. And we are mindful of the fact that buy-in from your players matters. At the same time, this isn't something they were counseled on in terms of making the decision. And I don't believe it's going to be a part of the process where we're leaning deeply on them for that input, because at this point, I don't think that's fair to them. We've had several very, very good, fruitful basketball conversations with our players along the way. And I think we've built a knowledge base of what it is they need to succeed. And that's our job to act on.
Yeah, hey, Griff, Doug Mouton at WWL TV. Look, in New Orleans, we've been through Chris Paul leaving first chance he got. We've been through Anthony Davis leaving first chance we got. How much of this and doing it after 1 year and not waiting is motivated, would you say, by a ticking clock on Zion? Is that fair?
No, I mean, none of it, Doug. I mean, I know nobody's going to believe that, but that's not what we do here. We're not chasing some invisible clock. We're trying to build a sustainable winner and a team that can begin to contend once it wins with regularity. That's what we're trying to build. That's what the urgency is. There's I don't believe in that invisible clock. You're either all the way in or you're all the way out. And this city is absolutely about that. I think all of you that have lived here for any extended period of time understand there's not a lot of in between in New Orleans. You're here because you love it and you want to be. And we believe our players want to win here and will love winning here. And we're not chasing anything other than the success that we need to have as a group. That's it. That's what motivates these things. There's no artificial urgency that comes from anything else.
Thanks, Griff. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.